Hello, baseball fans. This is King Ikeboo coming to you live from Comiskey Park on the south side of Chicago, where we are replaying the 1983 All-Star Game, as we are halfway through our 1983 replay. And this is not just a baseball replay. This is a 1983 replay. We go through not just sports, we go through the news, we go through the music, we go through the movies, everything that was going on in the first week of the All-Star break. You can go back, I'll put the link of the forum in the description, so you can go back and you can see there's weekly reports where I scan the news and I find out what exactly is going on in the world at that time. So here is our All-Star break standings. At the break, the Toronto Blue Jays are 7 games up on Baltimore in the American League East, which is a surprise. In the American League West, the Chicago White Sox are a game and a half ahead of the Angels, and you might think that that should be, then they would win the division by 20 games or more. This is not realistic. However, at the break, really, in 1983, I think the White Sox were like third place. They were, just after the break, they went on their big surge and then they took charge. But up to this point, they were languishing in fifth place in the first half. And they're just starting to get hot now. So it is realistic. In the National League East, the St. Louis Cardinals, who were, I think, fourth or fifth place in 1983, are at the top of the standings. And Montreal is second, game and a half. Philadelphia, the real division champions, are 7 games back. In the National League West, the San Francisco Giants, the surprising Giants, are game and a half ahead of Atlanta. And the real division leaders, the Los Angeles Dodgers, are in fourth place, 4.5 games back. The number one song at this time was, for the 5th straight week, Irene Cara's Flashdance, What a Feeling. And we also have what's called a Song of the Replay. The number one song for most weeks during the baseball season. And right now, the 1981 song Kim Carnes' Betty Davis Eyes was 9 weeks during the baseball season. So it is, so far, it is our Song of the Replay until it is dethroned. Tied for second, 2 songs, Ebony and Ivory by Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney. And that was 7 weeks at number 1. And then Blondie's, it was right in the beginning of the replay. It was like the first 7 weeks of 1980 replay was Blondie's Call Me. And she's still up there in second place, tied with Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. And then tied for fourth with 5, just moving in, was Irene Cara's Flashdance, and she tied The Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, and it knocked out one of the Paul McCartney songs. So he no longer, as the solo artist, is in the top 5 of the Song of the Week. Then I have a song that I would have liked better than the number one song. I call it the Song of the Week, and there really wasn't anything. So 1 week a year, usually in the summer, I pick a Canadian, one of the Canadian top songs that probably wasn't popular in the States. So in 1983, I picked this sappy love song, Sheriff, When I'm With You, and that's our Song of the Week. And the strange thing about this, I talk about that here, is it was like 61st in the United States. And then in 1985, this band from Ontario somewhere disbanded, and then 4 years later, this song was re-released in the United States and became the number one song in the States in like February of 1989. And I'm not going to sing this song for you because of the copyright violations. Yes, of course I can sing just like them. Not really. Then we talk about what movies were released. And of course at this time the big movie was Return of the Jedi in the summer of 83. Also, Trading Places was hot, and now we're getting, as in summer, the kind of the scrub movies are being released. And this one is Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson in Stroker Ace. Wasn't very good. I never saw it. Then we go through the news, and we talk about this bridge that collapsed in Connecticut because of a faulty pin. A 10-inch long metal pin snapped, and was the result. And then we talk about aspartame being approved. As I drink my Diet Pepsi beside me, the aspartame was approved in 1983 this week for use in American soft drinks. And then these two balloonists, world famous balloonists. This guy here, Maxie Anderson. I don't know if he was the first guy to balloon over the Atlantic. And I think he tried to go around the world in the balloon, and then he sprung a leak in India. And now in this balloon race in Germany, somehow the wind pushed him over East German airspace, or just before he was about to drift over East German airspace. He didn't want to go into East German airspace for obvious reasons, probably get shot down or captured and put in prison or something. So he desperately tried to get low and cut the ropes so that his gondola would fall. And just as he was doing it, he and his partner were doing that, a gust of wind took him up in the air, and he actually fell at a very high distance and died. And back then, people were always talking about the Guinness Book of World Records. You don't hear anything about the Guinness Book of World Records anymore. People are trying to set records for all kinds of things back then. And what happened to that? I don't know. You don't hear about it ever anymore. Then we had the 4th of July weekend. Was not a great time to go shopping. This dude here, Billy Ferry, walked into a supermarket, and there were a bunch of people in line, of course, as typical in a supermarket, and he poured gasoline on them and set them on fire, killing 2 people and injuring 16. So there he is, on trial. And then another Bolivar, Tennessee, a roof of another grocery store collapsed. So it was not a great time to shop for groceries. And then there's this ride here. First of all, a flight from Miami to Disney World. They used to have, I don't know, maybe they still do, Miami to Orlando shuttles for $29. Probably not $29 anymore. This shuttle going to Disneyland got hijacked to Cuba. And then this other ride here, the hydraulic system failed and riders were thrown 30 feet. So a lot of crazy things were happening. And Simon and Garfunkel got back together after 13 years and had a summer tour. And then we talk, of course, about sports. We talk about Jim Cott. Had his last baseball game in the major leagues after a 25-year career. And we have his career stats and the stat of his best year, 1966. We talk about Wimbledon. The champions were Martina Navratilova and John McEnroe, and he was, of course, not well known or well liked in London because of his outbursts. Wasn't very British, his way he complained and he yelled at the referees and things. But here in 1983, he didn't have a single outburst. So we talk about that. And then there was the NBA draft. Then they said was the can't miss prospect, the best prospect since Lou Alcindor was drafted, who was Ralph Sampson of Virginia. And actually the Houston Rockets had the 1st and 3rd picks and took Rodney McRae of Louisville with the 3rd pick, but he got injured and really is considered to be a bust. And the best guy in terms of win share, he only had 20 win shares for his career. The number 1 draft pick of that year, 1983, was Clyde Drexler, selected 14th by Portland, and had 135.6 career win shares. But that draft pick actually hurt them, because the next year, Michael Jordan was available, and Portland had the 2nd pick. Of course, Akeem Olajuwon went to Houston to have the Twin Towers. But instead of picking Michael Jordan, they said, well, we got Clyde Drexler already. We don't need Michael Jordan. So they chose Sam Bowie. And, of course, he was a bust. And then the Bulls got Jordan. And then we talk about Joe Delaney. And Joe Delaney was a Rookie of the Year in the NFL in 1981. He rushed for 1,121 yards for Kansas City. 2 years later, here in 1983, the July 4th weekend, he was at a water slide in a park in Monroe, Louisiana, when three boys decided to go swimming in a pond, and Joe Delaney yelled out at them to be careful, and they said, yeah, whatever, old man, what kids do. And they went swimming, and the pond was not a shallow pond, it was a deep pond. It was a dugout for the construction site. And all of a sudden they started to drown, and Joe Delaney, even though he was not able to swim himself, without thinking, without any consideration for himself, dived in to save these boys' life. He got one to the shore. This thing was like a 2-acre body of water. It was not a little pond, a little swimming pool. It was huge. And he got one of them to shore, saved his life, and the other two died, and he himself died. And he left behind his wife and 3 young children. And he was awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal by President Reagan and a membership in the Kansas City Chiefs Ring of Honor. So very sad story, but usually for athletes you hear about the drugs and the violence and the gambling and all these crazy things, but you have to talk about a guy who's a hero, and Joe Delaney certainly was. And then, yes, we talk about drugs. Of course, there's Steve Howe, the story of Steve Howe. Just was addicted to cocaine, and he went for help. You have to give him credit. He searched for help. He said, I have trouble, I need help. He went into rehab, and then when he got out of rehab, what did the commissioner do? He gave him a $54,000 fine and put him on 3 years probation. Kick him while he's down. Of course, he died later on. I read his biography. It was very sad. And we talk about this concept of batters batting out of turn. You can look at the forum and read that. Here's a guy, Del Crandall. He's a manager for 3 days for the Mariners, and he fell victim to the batting out of turn. And yes, he looks very distraught there. And the last news event we talk about is Mark the Bird Fidrich, who officially retired. He tried, of course, he was the sensation of 1976, the story of 1976. And he was, of course, they called him Big Bird because he had the wild hair, and he had those antics where he used to talk to the ball and used to, landscape the pitching mound, and people just loved him. In Detroit, they weren't a great team that year, but they would get like 5,000-10,000 people at Tiger Stadium. But when Fidrich pitched, they sold out 50,000 people. So every time he pitched, he was just this not only phenom, but he was just a sensation. Then we talk about who's born this week, and baseball player Jim Johnson was born this week. He was two-time saves leader in 2012 and 2013 for the Orioles. So he was born this week. And then Cheryl Cole was born this week on June 30th. And of course, I always have any excuse to put a pretty girl on this. So usually I have put athletes who are born and nice-looking girls. So here we go. Cheryl Cole. She's like the Kardashian of Britain. It's from what I have read. Kind of a combination of J-Lo and Kardashian. And she was on the X Factor with Simon Cowell. And so that's her. And then, like I say, they don't make small pictures of Cheryl. I used to be able to resize pictures in the Delphi forums, and then I became a paid extra member, and then I lost the ability to do it. So I don't know what's happening there, if I'm just missing something. But anyway, I don't think you mind if I have a big picture of her. And then Anderson Volquez was born this week, and he was, of course, the pitcher for the Royals in the World Series. He started Game 1 of the World Series in 2015, and that's the day his father died in Dominican Republic, and they didn't tell him until after he was taken out of the game. Then a couple years later, his brother was stabbed to death. And then his best friend, 5 days later, Orlando Ventura, was killed in a car crash in the Dominican. So he knows something about tragedy in his life. And then I go through the leaders. So that's it for that. That's what I have in the weekly report. So it's worth checking those out. You can go back and look at all the weekly reports of the past. But now we're talking about the All-Star Game. The 1983 All-Star Game was the 54th mid-season classic. And it was the notoriety or famous because for several reasons. But the first one was it was the 50th anniversary of the first All-Star Game held on July 6, 1933 at Comiskey Park. And I talk here about the history, what went on that first All-Star Game 50 years prior. And it was a part of the Chicago World's Fair. One of the reporters of the Chicago Tribune and Bill Veeck thought this would be a great idea for the World's Fair of Chicago to have an all-star game of baseball for the best players, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, all of them coming into Chicago and playing in an all-star game. They thought that would be a great idea, and they convinced the American League president, Will Harridge, of this, and they agreed, and then all the American League owners voted, and they were unanimous. Yeah, let's do this. And then, of course, the National League had to approve it as well, and everybody thought it was great, except the owners of the Boston Braves and New York Giants. They threatened to kibosh the entire idea, but palms were greased and arms were twisted, and finally, the two fuddy-duddies from the East Coast who probably just didn't like the attention for the city of Chicago agreed to hold the game one time. So on May 19th, 1933, Arch Ward of the Tribune posted, "This is the announcement of the greatest baseball game ever scheduled." And then the two league presidents met in Judge Kennesaw Mountain Linus' office a week later for the coin flip ceremony. AL President Harridge correctly called heads, which puts the game in Comiskey Park instead of Wrigley Field. Then the tickets went on sale in June. 9,000 box seats at Comiskey Park sold out in 24 hours at ticket price of $1.65. Then Comiskey Park's 38,000 reserved grandstand seats went on sale for $1.10 and sold out in a week. Then on July 3rd, Comiskey Park's 2,250 bleacher seats went on sale for 55 cents a piece. These sold out in less than 45 minutes, with thousands of disappointed fans left lingering in line. The fan response surprised these owners greatly. They expected fan apathy. They thought they wouldn't like this all-star game. They wouldn't want to see Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Who would think this? There was a Great Depression going on. You notice here the 55-cent tickets went the fastest. That was probably part of what, the Great Depression. People didn't have a lot of money. 55 cents was probably a lot of money in those days. But they certainly were willing to pay that to see the All-Star Game. The Chicago Tribune took out a rain insurance policy of $84.50 in case July 6th was a rainy day. But it was a beautiful sunny day, and the game went on as scheduled. More than 49,000 from 46 states of the Union packed into Comiskey Park. And the American League won 4-2. Babe Ruth, of course, was the most memorable all-star of that first game. Ruth hit a 2-run homer that was the difference in the game. But he also had two memorable fielding plays. The first, the bad fielding play. Early in the game, he misplayed a Lou Warnke, the pitcher's hit that was stretched into a triple. However, in the 8th inning, the Babe went to the wall for a great catch of a Chick Hafey blast, robbing him of a certain 2-run game-tying home run. And AL President Harridge was ecstatic on all fronts. The American League won. Profits of the game were $45,506.99, and still Harridge announced that the All-Star Game was going to be a one-time event. If it were made an annual event, it might sink to the level of an ordinary ball game, he said. Here I say, Mr. Harridge, you are confusing baseball's All-Star Game with football, basketball, and hockey's All-Star Games. Their All-Star Games suck, and they have to keep tinkering with their formats to create any interest. But this is baseball, and the All-Star Game is king. While no one can remember anything about those other All-Star Games, the baseball All-Star Game has memories that will endure forever. People still remember next year's game in 1934 when Carl Hubbell struck out the ultimate murderer's row of Ruth, Gehrig, Fox, Simmons, and Cronin in consecutive fashion. People still talk about the Ted Williams 3-run walk-off homer off Claude Passeau to give the American League a 7-5 win in 1941. People still remember the 1946 game when Ted Williams hit Rip Sewell's eephus pitch for a home run. You know, those little lob pitches that Bill Lee used to do. Well, it was started by Rip Sewell. Everybody thought that was such a great thing, but Ted Williams just knocked it out of the park for a home run in the All-Star Game. Red Schoendienst's blast won the 1950 game at Comiskey. Stan Musial's blast in Milwaukee won the 1955 game. And people still marvel at Reggie Jackson's homer over the roof at Tiger Stadium in 1971. Who will forget the gusts of wind that blew Stu Miller off the mound at Candlestick Park in the 1961 game? Who will forget Pete Rose crashing into Ray Fosse in the 1970 game at Riverfront? This is not the no defense All-Star Games of the NFL, NBA, and NHL. Great defense could be seen in the 1979 All-Star Game at the Kingdome when Dave Parker's arm was the star of the show. Bud Selig thought that he had to make the All-Star Game meaningful by giving the winner home field advantage in the World Series, but Bud was mistaken. Baseball's All-Star Game will always be the only All-Star Game that counts. And in that first All-Star Game, 18 players, this 50th All-Star Game, I should say, that's a typo. In that 50th All-Star Game, 18 players, both managers, 3 coaches, and even an umpire. I guess it is the first All-Star Game. I was thinking about something else. In that first All-Star Game, all these players, both managers, 3 coaches, and even an umpire would be later named to the Baseball Hall of Fame, which was inaugurated 3 years later. So back to the present, 1983. Typically, this game is held on the second Tuesday of July. But this year, it was switched to the first week of July. You think, well, yeah, they wanted to put it on the same day as the original All-Star Game 50 years before. That's not the reason. When the South Side was awarded the game in 1981, it was assumed the game would be held, as it always is, the second Tuesday of July. However, when the White Sox officials began to search hotel space to hold the players, press, owners, and officials, they were rebuked. The second week of July in 1983, 2 years in advance, was already booked, as 70,000 women were scheduled to descend on Chicago for a housewares show. White Sox officials found no room at the inn. That must have been one humdinger of a housewares show if you had to book it 2 years in advance. When the White Sox told the American League of their problem, the other owners were stunned. Instead of moving the game to another city, the White Sox made the case about how great it would be to have the 50th anniversary of the first All-Star Game on the exact same day 50 years later, and the other owners agreed. So thanks, Housewares Show, for us having the 50th All-Star Game exactly 50 years later at the same place on the same day. 15, this is what I was saying before. 15 of the surviving All-Stars from that first game in 1933 were in attendance and were honored. 13 members of that game had passed away. The others probably couldn't make it. One of those in attendance was Tiger legend Charlie Gehringer, 76 years old. He said that he was on base when Babe Ruth hit his 2-run shot in that first All-Star Game. And he said, "It was the only time I was happy to see the Babe hit one, because all the other ones I saw him hit were against the Tigers." Carl Hubbell, 80 years old, was there. He said that Lou Warnke of the Cubs was a leading vote getter in the National League. Even from the first time it was in the first All-Star Game, fans voted. And the number one for the National League was Lou Warnke, a pitcher, which was unusual. I don't think pitchers, we don't vote for pitchers anymore, I don't think. Anyway, he was the leading vote getter in the National League, and that Carl Hubbell, was second in the fan voting. They didn't vote for the guys, the batters. They voted for the pitchers back then. And yet, Bill Hallahan of the Cardinals was named the starting pitcher for the National League. Hubbell said he knew why that was. John McGraw was named manager of the National League, but that was more of an honorary position. I think it was probably his last year of managing the Giants, pretty close to it, and then he died soon after. Branch Rickey was with the Cardinals at the time, and he was the one who really called the shots. So he named Hallahan the starter. So right from the first All-Star game, you had managers showing favoritism to their own players. Things really haven't changed since. Hubbell did pitch 2 innings of the 1933 game, but admits that he didn't, 50 years later, remember anything about his performance. He could not say that about the 1934 game the next year when he struck out those 5 Hall of Famers in a row. They won't let me forget, Hubbell said. And I'm seeing some things. I'm talking too loud. I'm getting some feedback here. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit so I don't, blast you guys away and get all this distortion. I'm just getting excited here. I love the All-Star game. So he could not say that he didn't remember, because the 1933 game, he said, I really don't remember those 2 innings that I pitched. But the 1934 game, he could not say that because he struck out those 5 Hall of Famers in a row. They won't let me forget, Hubbell said when he was 80 years old at the 50th anniversary All-Star game. That's what his comment was. It was just kind of a cool comment, I thought. So going to 1983 game, the National League was demonstrating total domination. The National League had won 11 games in a row and 19 of the last 20. Can you imagine? The National League won 19 of 20 straight All-Star games. The only game the American League won in that 20-year span was the 1971 game that Reggie Jackson hit that massive homer. How different it is now that the American League has won 13 of the last 16 games. But you think about the Oakland A's of 2002, what a big deal it was that they won 20 games in a row. Wait, this is the All-Star game. I mean, the American League had great players. These weren't scrubs. They weren't, the over-the-hill scrubs. These were the best players in the American League, and they lost 19 of 20 games. That was crazy. And, of course, this game probably was the most famous All-Star game of the 80s because of not only the 50th anniversary, but the National League would not get their 12th straight win as Atlee Hammaker was blitzed for 7 runs in 2/3 of an inning in the 3rd inning, including the first and only All-Star Game Grand Slam by Freddie Lynn, and the American League won it going away 13-3. So now we have played in the replay. We not only have the real All-Star Game, but we have the replay All-Star Game. And we've had that. This is the 4th annual, not the 54th annual, like it was real. And you say, why is there 54 if it's a 50th anniversary? Well, the All-Star Game was such a hit. It was not just a one-time thing. It was such a hit that in the late 50s and early 60s, they actually played 2 All-Star Games a few years in 1 year. And maybe then, yes, President Herridge, yes, they realized if you have 2 All-Star games again in a year, then maybe, yeah, it's becoming an ordinary ball game. So they went back to 1. I think that was a good move. I don't know why. I guess they were trying to milk it for the popularity back then, but it didn't work well having 2 All-Star games. Anyway, it is the 54th because of that, even though it's the 50th anniversary. But we have our 4th anniversary, 4th annual replay All-Star game. In the first All-Star game, the National League won 8-7. Very close ball game. Frank Pastore of Cincinnati was the winner. Ed Farmer of Chicago was the loser. And home runs by Mike Schmidt, and the MVP was Mike Schmidt. In the 81 All-Star game, the American League won 3-2. So we didn't have We're not going to have this long National League stretch of wins because the American League has already won a game. Steve McCaddy got the win. Nolan Ryan got the loss. Home runs by Dusty Baker and Bobby Grich and Cliff Johnson. And the MVP was Chet Lemon. I think he was with the White Sox then. Then in 1982, last year in Montreal, the National League won 6-2. The winning pitcher was Jerry Royce. The loser was Dave Stieb. Home runs were hit by Robin Yount, which is fitting for 1982 and Robin Yount because he was the man in 1982. And home runs for the National League, Dusty Baker had 2 home runs in consecutive years. Andre Dawson and the MVP went to Royce, who pitched 3 innings, gave up only a hit, and got the win, so he was the MVP. And now my favorite part, I have to admit, the favorite part of the All-Star Game is the player introductions. And of course, we're going to have player introductions here today. So, for the visiting National League All-Stars, the pitching reserves. From the Atlanta Braves, Steve Bedrosian, 1-3, 160 ERA, 103 WHIP, 3 for 3 in save ops, and leads with 8 holds. And it's his first replay All-Star game. He was not a real All-Star game, a real All-Star. From the Pittsburgh Pirates, and these are in alphabetical order of last name. John Candelaria, 8-6, 259 with I think he's a leader in the National League in WHIP with 0.97. And it's his first replay All-Star game, and he wasn't a real All-Star that year. From the Houston Astros, Frank DiPino, their closer. 2-1, 203, .82 ERA, 19 saves and 21 opportunities. It's his first replay All-Star game. From the San Francisco Giants, and how could we leave him off when he is so tied, so linked to the 83 All-Star game? Atlee Hammaker of the San Francisco Giants. But he deserves it. He's 9-1 with a 2.78 ERA, 1.16 WHIP. His first replay All-Star game, and he was also a real All-Star, of course, naturally. And that was his first All-Star game. From the Philadelphia Phillies, Al Holland, their closer, 0-2, 214, .95 WHIP. He's 23 out of 26 in save opportunities. His first replay All-Star game, and he wasn't a real All-Star. You see that. Lots of the real All-Stars didn't make this game, and a lot of them that weren't All-Stars made it. And that's the joys and the novelty of the replay system. You can have whole different results than the real thing. From the San Diego Padres, the Count, John the Count Montefusco, 4-1, 1.24, and 0.93 WHIP, and Montefusco was a starter for the Padres for the first half of the season of the 1983 season, and he was lights out. He was the league leader in ERA, where everybody else was in the 2s. He had an ERA of 0.75, and then that's the thing, when you do as played replay, in real life he was taken out of the starting rotation when he didn't deserve it in the replay. So then, and you could see every year he was still number 1 in ERA as you looked week by week on the leaderboards, and then finally he's fallen out of the, about now 80 innings pitched to be eligible. He's like 70 innings pitched. But he still only has a 1.24 ERA, which is amazing. And it's his first replay All-Star game. He was not a real All-Star. From the Los Angeles Dodgers, Tom Niedenfuhr, 4-2, 260 ERA with a .76 WHIP. He's 4 for 4 in save opportunities. He was not the main closer of the Dodgers. It's his first replay All-Star game, and he wasn't a real All-Star. From the New York Mets, Jesse Orosco, 0-1, 1.88 ERA, .66 WHIP. He is the closer. He is 13 saves, 2 blown saves, first replay All-Star game, and he was a real All-Star, and that's also his first All-Star game. From the Montreal Expos, Steve Rogers, 9-5, 230 ERA, 1.02 WHIP. It's his first replay All-Star game, which is hard to believe. In real life, he was the starting pitcher of that game in Montreal, if I remember correctly. And so he was an All-Star definitely at least last year in real life, but he did not make it. I think he's, he struggled a little bit in this replay. But it's his first replay All-Star game, and he was a real All-Star. It's his 5th. Then from the Cincinnati Reds, Mario Soto. And he's 6-9, 3.16, 1.15 ERA. His numbers are good. He's like in the number 1 in strikeouts in the National League. But because he's on a poor offensive team that doesn't give him any runs, he has 9 losses already. It's his second replay All-Star game. He was also an All-Star in 1982. And he was also a real All-Star, his second All-Star appearance. And not only was he a real All-Star, he was the starting pitcher of the National League in 1983. And from the St. Louis Cardinals, Bruce Sutter, 2-3, 2.64 ERA, 1.06 WHIP. And he leads the National League at 27 saves already, which is because his team is in first place. And they have such horrible pitching, but they have... the key to this replay, I've said it time and time again, is having... you don't have like 3 great hitters and the rest horrible holes. You have a balanced lineup of lots of on-base percentage. You keep that carousel going, and that's what the St. Louis Cardinals... It doesn't help or it doesn't hurt that the Cardinals get all the roles. Did I say that out loud? But anyway, as a result, they have horrible pitching, but at the end of the game, it's close. Bruce Sutter comes in 27 times out of 29. He saved the game. This is his 4th replay All-Star. He's been a replay All-Star every year, and he was not a real All-Star in 1983. Now the infield reserves. From the Montreal Expos, the kid, Gary Carter. You can see 260, 341, 469, 11 home runs, 28 RBIs, 25 runs. This is his 4th replay. So like Bruce Sutter, he's been in every replay All-Star game, and he was also a real All-Star. He was a starting catcher, and this was his 6th All-Star game. From the Atlanta Braves, the first baseman, Chris Chambliss, 284, 380, 534, 15 home runs, 42 RBIs, 37 runs, and that's his first replay All-Star game. He was not a real All-Star. From the San Diego Padres, his first year in San Diego, Steve Garvey, first base, 298, 349, 508, 15 home runs, 45 RBIs, 48 runs. His first replay All-Star game. Can you believe that? Well, he just didn't make it. There's so many great first basemen, but now that he's gone to San Diego, he's having his best season. He's pretty much the entire San Diego offense. At least he was, but now Tony Gwynn has been called up to the Padres, so that will give Steve Garvey some support for sure. From the St. Louis Cardinals, Tommy Herr, 289, 372 on base, 414 slugging, 2 home runs, 22 RBIs, 42 runs, his first replay All-Star game. And he gets on base in a very good clip. And that's why he's here. And he's a very good second baseman. The shortstop from the Pittsburgh Pirates, Dale Berra, 282, 364, 459. It's not just his name that gets him in the All-Star game. He earns it. 11 home runs, 41 RBIs, 28 runs. It's his second replay All-Star game. He was a starting shortstop last year in 1982 for the National League. And then the Chicago Cub representative. Every team must have a representative, even the Cubs. And they have the third baseman, the Penguin, Ron Cey, 307 average, 357 on base, 528 slugging, 17 home runs, 59 RBIs, 37 runs, and it's his second replay All-Star game. He was an All-Star last year. Now, the outfield reserves from the Montreal Expos. The Hawk, Andre Dawson, 287 average, 320 on base, 519 slugging, 18 home runs, 55 RBIs, 51 runs scored. You say, well, those are pretty great numbers. How is he not a starter? Well, the strength of the National League really is their outfield, and the strength of the American League is their infield, and you will see that. So even though Andre Dawson was incredible, he didn't make the starting lineup for the outfield for the National League. This is his second replay All-Star game. He was a starter in 1982, and he was also a real All-Star. This is his third All-Star game. From the Houston Astros, Jose Cruz, .334 batting average, .386 on base, .518 slugging. Incredible numbers as well. Why is he not starting? 13 home runs, 43 RBIs, 50 runs scored. It's his first replay All-Star game. Well, we'll see why these two great hitters are not starting when we get into the starting lineup, which is now what we're going to do for your National League All-Stars. The manager of the National League as manager of the back-to-back world champion. You say they weren't back-to-back. Well, this is the replay man. The Dodgers won in 81 and 82 in this replay. So he's back-to-back world champion manager. Therefore, he's the world champion back-to-back All-Star National League manager as well. So he's back-to-back manager of the National League All-Stars. He has been relatively low-key. The big news in 1982 was that comment about Kurt Bevacqua. So, of course, I have to make a comment about that. He has said nothing else about Kurt Bevacqua, so he's been quiet. He's let the other managers in the National League stay in the spotlight/trouble, especially Lee Elia in Chicago. 1983 had that epic rant of Lee Elia when he bashed his own fans after a tough loss. Not very good public relations, and was almost fired, but because he's like best friends with Dallas Green, the Cubs general manager, he kept his job where other managers probably wouldn't. You can go on YouTube and hear his epic rant. It's up there. Just search Lee Elia rant and it will come up. Very interesting comments he made. Some of them weren't totally wrong, I would say, but you have to hear it for yourself if you haven't already. In real life, the Lasorda's Dodgers are doing very well, only a game out of first place, and they will end up winning the division and meet the Phillies in the World Series in the real life, while his replay team has not done as well, finishing the first half at .500 in fourth place, 4.5 games behind the front runners up the coast. I remember with 15 games left in the 1980 replay, I made the comment in the write-ups, what about these Dodgers? I mean, the Dodgers in real life tied for first place in 1980 with the Houston Astros, and I made comment about Dusty Baker. And I said, what's up with these Dodgers? I mean, they're just doing terrible. And Dusty Baker, he was like dreadful. And from that point on, it was 15 games left in the replay in the season of 1980. Then the Dodgers, from that point on, just went on an incredible tear. They won the last 15 games of 1980. And Dusty Baker started hitting out of his mind. And then in 1981, they were incredible. They won the World Series. In 1982, they were even better. They just ran away with the National League, although they almost lost to the Cubs in the National League Championship Series. The Cubs had the lead in the 8th inning and blew it. But they almost won that. That would have been incredible. But the Dodgers won, and then they swept the Brewers in 4 straight. And Dusty Baker, as you say, he hit back-to-back All-Star Game home runs. He was incredible also to make the All-Star Game, you have to be incredible. But he was great. And then it's kind of nice to see the Dodgers starting to, not that I'm a Dodger hater. I really am not. But it's just, you see this team winning over and over and over again, just blowing people out. It's kind of nice to see them at .500 in fourth place, 4.5 games back. Although they could easily just now that I've talked again, that they could take charge again and run away with the National League again. It could happen. But anyway, your National League manager from the Los Angeles Dodgers, Tommy Lasorda. There he is, pointing at nothing in particular. Leading off for the National League and playing left field, his second replay All-Star game, his first being in his rookie 1981 season. He also led off and played left field in the real 1983 All-Star game. Only it was his third real All-Star appearance. When he's mentioned, typically his name is used in comparison with Rickey Henderson. However, in the replay, he has outshone Rickey since he entered the major leagues. Currently, he is 14th in National League in batting average, first in runs scored, tied for 7th in most base hits, 7th in on-base percentage, 4th in walks, and naturally first in stolen bases. From the Montreal Expos, Tim Raines. And because say, well, I could have picked one of these two guys over Raines, but it's nice to have Tim Raines leading off. Anytime when you can have Tim Raines leading off, you take it. He's that great a leadoff hitter. Batting second and playing second base, his first replay All-Star game. He was not a real 1983 All-Star, and I guess what you could say about this guy is he tends to be overlooked. He was named as the Sporting News Rookie of the Year in 1982, but the baseball writers who choose the real Rookie of the Year award only vote for Dodgers, and so the main National League Rookie Award went to Steve Sax. He's outshining Sax in every possible way in this replay, so while Sax is the real All-Star starting baseman in 1983, we, in this replay, have integrity, and we will not overlook Johnny in this replay. He is currently 17th in batting average in the National League. He's second in doubles with 24, behind only Billy Buckner of the Cubs, and he's tied for second in triples with 7, only behind Darryl Thomas of the Dodgers. He has stepped up to the plate 303 times so far this year and has only struck out 14 times. Don't you wish that some players today would take his cue? He will continue to be overlooked by his own team, who will claim to be in a youth movement in 1987 and trade him away to the Angels, even though he himself was still a young man, only in his 5th season. From the Pittsburgh Pirates, Johnny Ray. Great numbers for a second baseman. Look at that slugging percentage for a second baseman. Awesome. Batting third and playing first base. Right now, he's the front runner for the National League MVP award. His team is overperforming by 8 games over their real record, and he's the number one reason for that. His team sensed that he was beginning to slow a bit in right field, so instead of dumping him, they traded away their long-standing all-star first baseman and former MVP Keith Hernandez and put him at first base in his place. He leads the National League in batting average and hits. He is second in RBIs, 5th in on-base percentage, 4th in slugging, 4th in on-base plus slugging. The key to the Cardinals' success this season has been for her, Lonnie Smith when he's not in rehab, or Willie McGee to get on base in front of him so he can drive them in. This is his first replay All-Star game, having started for the National League in 1980 and 1981. He was also selected to the real 1983 All-Star game, which was his 4th appearance from the St. Louis Cardinals. Look at these numbers. George Hendrick, 366 batting average, 394 on base, 555 slugging, 11 home runs, 64 RBIs, which is second in the National League. The other prime candidate for the National League MVP at the All-Star break is their cleanup hitter and right fielder. The real Giants are in 4th place, below 500 at 39-40, 9.5 games back. However, because of him and the other member of his dynamic duo that the Giants are trying so hard to get rid of, in real life the Giants are just anxious, chomping at the bit to get rid of him and his other member of this dynamic new duo, to be announced later, that while they're trying to get rid of him, the replay Giants, these guys are just out of their minds. And they are in first place with a 44-35 record, a 5-game improvement. This is his 4th replay All-Star game. He gets called every year. He's playing out of his mind in the replay. And named to the 3rd time to the All-Star starting lineup. He was only a reserve in the 1981 replay All-Star game. So what I'm saying here is that he's been in all 4 All-Star games so far. He was a starting right fielder in 3 of them. And he was only a reserve, like that is so bad, in the 1981 replay All-Star game. And in fact, while he's been an all-star every year in this replay, he has not been a real all-star in any of the years. So in real life, he doesn't do that well, but in the replay, this replay loves him. Jack Clark, okay, I'll say his name. You can see it right here. They love Jack Clark. He hits out of his mind. He was a real all-star in 78 and 79 and will not be again until 1985, not until the Giants will have successfully gotten rid of him. This season, he is 4th in batting average, 1st in home runs, 4th in RBIs, 2nd in runs, 2nd in on base, 1st in slugging, 1st in on base plus slugging, 2nd in walks. Did I say that again already? No! He's like incredible. When it is put this way, perhaps he should be the front runner for MVP. If he isn't, it's only because his teammate is taking away some of the votes. From the San Francisco Giants, the amazing Jack Clark. Batting fifth. The second half of the before-mentioned Giants dynamic duo that they're trying to dump. He is batting fifth for the National League and is the designated hitter. Okay, let's be frank. Jack Clark can be a bit outspoken. In some crazy way, it can be a bit understood if a team would want to get rid of him. However, in the case of our fifth place hitter, it is totally crazy that the Giants want so bad to get rid of him. Bill James calls him the most underrated player in baseball history, absolutely number one on the list. He was a hugely underrated defender in his prime. He hit over 400 home runs, and he got on base at a career 361 mark. Another thing that no one can ever take away from him was that he was the runner on base when Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record, number 715. People never talk about that fact, but I will. The Giants will get their wish after this season, and he will move on to Detroit in 1984 and be the huge missing piece, along with Guillermo Hernandez, that will get the Tigers over the top as runaway world's champions. I don't know if the Tigers sent the Giants a huge fruit basket in thanks, but they should have. Sure, he had an off year in 1984, but even then he was much better than Tommy Brookins. He'll be much better for the Tigers in 85 and 87. This is his second replay All-Star game. He was a starter in 1980. He was also a real 1983 All-Star, also for the second time. He was never known to have a high batting average, but still, he is 19th in the batting in the National League so far this year. He is tied with the Penguin for 6th in homers. He is 3rd in runs scored, 2nd behind his teammate in slugging, Jack Clark, 5th in walks, and 3rd in on-base plus slugging, which is the number one gauge of any successful baseball season. He is the huge reason for the surprising first-place Giants. From the San Francisco Giants, Darrell Evans. 297, 386, 567 slugging with 17 home runs and 51 RBIs. The designated, not 61 runs. I mean, this is not Tim Raines here, not Ricky Henderson, yet he still has 61 runs. The amazing Darrell Evans, batting sixth and playing third base. If there's one man who has dominated this replay so far, it's this Philly. He was the replay National League MVP in 1980 and 1981, and it was only because Jason Thompson played out of his mind that he doesn't have the three-peat. He is the only man to hit more than 40 home runs in each of the first 3 years of this replay. In 1980, he hit 49 home runs. In 1980, his greatest season, he hit 1981, his greatest season, he hit 52 homers and drove in 150 runs. Last year, he hit 41. Will he hit 41 again in 1983? I wouldn't bet against him. You might argue, well, he only has 19 home runs right now. He might not get 40. Let me counter with this. In 1980, the year he hit 49, he had 19 home runs at the break and hit 30 in the second half. So he's certainly capable of doing that again this year. This is his fourth replay All-Star game. In other words, every year, of course. And not only has he appeared, but he has started all 4 games. He has also started in the real All-Star game, which was his 8th All-Star appearance. He is 10th in the National League in batting average, tied for 2nd in homers, 6th in RBI, 1st in on-base percentage, 3rd in slugging. If you guessed that would put him among the leaders in on-base plus slugging, you would be right. He is 2nd, only behind Jack Clark. The National League leader in walks is not some punch-and-Judy hitter. It is our Philly. He also leads the league in strikeouts, which is understandable. No pain, no gain. However, his strikeout total is not some insane, crazy 2018 type tally. He leads the National League in strikeouts with a measly 68. The only thing that's keeping from being the front runner in the MVP discussions is that his team is currently in 3rd place. If the replay Phillies do what the real Phillies did in the second half and surge to the front of the NL East, then you know that he will be the MVP again. From the Philadelphia Phillies, he needs no introduction, Michael Jack Schmidt. 309 batting average, 445 on base, 562 slugging, 19 home runs, 57 RBIs, and 50 runs scored. Do the American League have a chance against batters like this? We shall see. Batting 7th and playing center field. Here's the real MVP batting 7th. And he was the real MVP of the National League last year and this year. He did not live up to his MVP standards in the 1982 replay, with his batting average 25 points lower and his on-base percentage 50 points lower than real life, although his power numbers were slightly better. His team in general disappointed mightily. I was looking forward to the Braves giving the Dodgers a run for their money, as they were the real 1982 National League champs, National League West champs, but they just were horrible in the replay. So it was very disappointing. I didn't like that at all. However, this year the Braves are right near the top. They are anticipating a giant second half relapse while they wait in second place, 1.5 games back, ready to capitalize if and when it happens. This year his numbers are also right there where they were in real life. His replay average and slugging are higher. His homers are exactly on pace. And his RBIs are way ahead of his real life's pace. He is scheduled or on pace to, exceed his real life totals by more than 30 RBIs. If you asked anyone in the 1983 All-Star Game this question, will he be a Hall of Famer? Everyone would have said absolutely. It is one of baseball's great mysteries that after the 1987 season, his performance just went off a cliff. It was not due to injury. It was like he forgot how to play. You would have to ask him. I haven't seen many interviews with him, so therefore I have not heard someone ask him this question. But I would ask him this question: what happened after the 1980? You were on a clear Hall of Fame pace, and it just fell off a cliff in 1988 and beyond. He joined Roger Maris and Juan Gonzalez as the only multiple MVP players not to get elected to the Hall of Fame. However, here in 1983, things were still going strong. He wasn't known for being a huge batting average guy, and yet here he is, sitting in 6th place in the National League in batting average. He's tied for 4th in homers. He leads the National League in RBIs. That's why Jack Clark is not the leader, because of him, our 7th place hitter. He is 4th in runs scored. He's one of 4 National Leaguers who already have 100 hits on the season. He is 6th in slugging, 6th on base plus slugging. It's his 3rd replay All-Star game, having been selected in 80 and 82, although it's his first start. He was also a starter in the real 1983 All-Star game, which was also his 3rd appearance. From the Atlanta Braves, Dale Murphy, leading the league with 69 RBIs at halftime, at the All-Star break. Batting 8th and catching. While in real life, Gary Carter owned the National League starting catcher position for 10 years. Here in the replay, you are not selected for your name, but for your performance. So far this year, he has been better than the kid. His team and Carter's are battling tooth and nail for supremacy of the National League East. So not only has his team scratched to the top, so has he as well for the honor of starting National League catcher. The fact that he is in this position at all is incredible. It was only 3 years ago that one night he was so paranoid that Commissioner Bowie Kuhn knew of his problems with drugs that he was certain that Kuhn was going to sneak that night into his house to tell them that he was banned from baseball for life. It did not occur to him that Kuhn would only have to make an announcement at a press conference, and it was not necessary to sneak into his house and tell him personally while he was laying in bed. Regardless of that fact, that night he sat on watch, looking out his front window, certain that the commissioner would be coming, clutching billiard balls and a shotgun. So he's come a long way in 3 years. Since that time, he was released by his team, the Kansas City Royals, which led him to enter and successfully complete a rehab program. He's not the only one, my friends, at this time. Now he is with the other team in Missouri and the starting catcher of the National League. His problems with cocaine would not be gone for good, however. When he died in 2002, the cause of death was said to be excited delirium caused by cocaine that stopped his heart. He was high on cocaine. He crashed his vehicle into a tree or into a ditch somehow, and he tried pushing his vehicle back onto the road, and he died. He leads Gary Carter in all major statistics. I guess the moral of that story, stay away from drugs. Listen to Nancy Reagan. He leads Carter in all major statistics except home runs and is 5 percentage points behind in slugging. Otherwise, he far exceeds the kid in everything else. This is his first replay All-Star game. He did not appear in the real game either, although he is a 4-time All-Star with Kansas City. From the St. Louis Cardinals, Darryl Porter. 378, 374 on base, 466 slugging, 5 home runs, 35 RBIs, 33 runs. And then batting ninth, the shortstop. The fact that he was the best shortstop in the National League in 1983 only meant that the sky was the limit for this Astro. He led all National League shortstops in every offensive category. In fact, he would finish 7th in the entire National League MVP voting in 1983. At the end of 1983, he is being touted as a future Hall of Famer. However, it all changed in only the 5th game of the 1984 season when he was hit in the eye by a Mike Torres fastball. The pitch broke the orbital bone around his left eye and ended his 1984 season. He returned in 1985 but suffered from problems with depth perception that permanently hampered his potential. What could have been if that one pitch did not happen? Therefore, he would always be compared to Tony Conigliaro, who was also hit in the eye by a pitch which greatly hampered his potential Hall of Fame career. In fact, in 1991, our shortstop won the Tony Conigliaro Award in recognition of recovery from severe injury. He is 3rd among NL shortstops in fielding percentage with .974. He leads all shortstops in homers, RBIs, runs scored, and slugging percentage. It is his first All-Star Game appearance. He also appeared in the real All-Star Game but did not start. From the Houston Astros, Dickie Thon. 287, 344, 477. Great numbers for a shortstop. Remember, in these days, we'll talk about this a little later, but shortstops didn't have 477 slugging percentages. They did not hit 20 home runs, as Dickie did in 1983. What could have been if he didn't get hit in the head with that pitch? Mike Torres, what were you doing? Also, starting for the National League and warming up in the bullpen. This is his 4th replay All-Star game. In other words, he too has been in every All-Star game, and it's the 2nd time he's been named the starting pitcher, having started the 1980 Classic. He was not selected for the real All-Star game, although he was a 10-time All-Star. So surprisingly, he was not in this game. He currently leads the National League in wins, is 2nd in strikeouts, 2nd in innings pitched, and 14th in ERA. He remains the subject of one of the worst, if not the worst, trades that the Cardinals have ever made, which demonstrates why owners should sit in their luxury boxes with their feet up and watch the games from afar. And when they let the baseball men make the decisions and they win the World Series, then the owner can go down to the clubhouse for the first time all year and accept the World Series trophy from the commissioner. Gussie Busch did not do this, ordering our starter to be traded after a contract dispute, and what was the Cardinals' loss was the Phillies' great gain. From the Philadelphia Phillies, Steve Carlton, 11-4, 297, 1.26 whip, 135 strikeouts, 54 walks. And now, our honorary National League All-Star. 2 great legends of baseball have announced their retirements after the 1983 season, and both have been honored by being All-Stars for the final time, one in each league. He's regarded as the greatest catcher in baseball history. This is his 14th All-Star game. The greatest player ever from Binger, Oklahoma. In high school in Binger High, his baseball team were riding a school bus on April 1st, 1965. Going down a hill, the brakes failed. The driver called out, "No brakes!" The players laughed because they thought the driver was playing an April Fool's joke. But he wasn't, and the bus crashed, killing 2 of his teammates. Often, our Hall of Famer said he thought how easily it could have been him. Now at age 71, he's a full-time single dad of 2 young boys, the older of which looks exactly like him. In between these 2 facts, the bus crash and his single dad status, In between these two facts, he was a 2-time MVP, 2-time world champion, 10-time Gold Glove catcher, Hall of Famer, and catcher of the 20th century, and I say catcher of any century, from the Cincinnati Reds, Johnny Bench. The last season for Johnny Bench. Ladies and gentlemen, the National League All-Stars. Now let's introduce the home team, the American League All-Stars, the pitching staff reserves. From the Kansas City Royals, Mike Armstrong, his first replay All-Star game. From the Chicago White Sox, we're going to clip this along a little bit. From the White Sox, Floyd Bannister. And of course, fans going crazy because he's a White Sox. Woo! Or White Sox. You know, as the fans always did. Cheer more in the All-Star game than any other time for their players. 10-4, 246. His first replay All-Star game. He was not a real All-Star. From the New York Yankees, George Frazier. 4-3, 102. I always want to say, down goes Frazier, but I won't. Well, I guess I did. 4-3, 102, 107 whip. From the Baltimore Orioles, Tippy Martinez. One of my all-time favorite names for a pitcher, Tippy. 7-6, 262. First real All-Star game, and also was a real All-Star. From the Baltimore Orioles, Scott McGregor, 9-4, 272. His first replay All-Star game. He was not a real All-Star. From the Detroit Tigers, Jack Morris, 10-7, 275. His third replay All-Star game. He was a starter in 1981, and he was named to the team in 1982. From the Kansas City Royals, the Quiz, Dan Quisenberry. 14 of 16 in save opportunities. His first replay All-Star game and his second real All-Star game. From the New York Yankees, Dave Righetti. And I have to admit, you know, he was on the border. He was probably the 12th pitcher, but I had to put him in because of what happened in his last start. You've got to see it. It's the last video. Dave Righetti's perfect game. I know I should have put it in big capital letters, perfect game, you know, to get more views, but, you know, I wanted to leave it a little bit of spoilers for someone who just tuned in. You know, reward my viewers and not get cheap views. So Dave Righetti. One thing about this also, Bert Campaneris was the third baseman of that game, and I think it was his, I'm getting the number, I think it was 11th no-hitter that he was a part of, and he leads all of baseball history in participation in no-hit games. Because he was in, you know, Dave Righetti, of course, was the real, you know, no-hitter that game, and in the replay, he pitched a perfect game. But so Bert Campaneris was in that game. I think it's either 11 or 13th, one of the two. Just that's an incredible record. Be a part of 11 no-hitters. So I know Catfish Hunter was one of them. So it's his first replay All-Star game. From the Cleveland Indians, future Cub, Rick Sutcliffe, 10-3, 306. His first replay All-Star game. He was also a real All-Star. From the Milwaukee Brewers, Don Sutton. What would the Milwaukee pitching staff be without Don Sutton? They have Don Sutton and a bunch of nothing else, really. 10-3, 342. His third replay All-Star game. They really went south. They lost Pete Vukovich. I think, you know, they just went all out in 1982, especially in the postseason. You know, they went all in, and they just threw Pete Vukovich out there, no matter how his arm felt. I know he was injured. No, he's hurting. I heard him say that, and he just gave it everything he had, and the next year he just couldn't do it, which was unfortunate. But I guess that's, you know, if you're going to get to the World Series, you want to win it. It's his third replay All-Star game. He was also in the replay All-Star game in 80 and 81, although with the Dodgers. And then from the Detroit Tigers, Milt Wilcox, 9-5, 319, his first replay All-Star game. Now the infielder reserves. From the Chicago White Sox. I'm just imitating the Comiskey fans. I'm not a fan of the White Sox myself. But Steve Carlton. Or Steve Carlton. Carlton Fisk. Sorry about that. Carlton Fisk, the catcher. 259, 362, 448. His first replay All-Star game. From the Milwaukee Brewers, Cecil Cooper, the first baseman, and he's actually the leader in the American League in home runs. He's tied in all of baseball for the home run league, and he's actually the leader in RBIs. But he's not starting. Why is that? Well, you'll see a little later. His second replay All-Star game, and he was also in the real All-Star game, his fourth. From the Seattle Mariners. We won't say anything about we have to have a Seattle Mariner, so we won't say that. But he was a deserving All-Star. Pat Putnam of the Seattle Mariners, first base, 259. Yeah, he had a good. He's over 504 slugging. That's All-Star type numbers. 13 home runs, 41 RBIs. His first replay All-Star game. From the Minnesota Twins, John Castino. And so many hitters are having good years for the Twins. Tom Brunansky's doing well. Gary Gaetti is doing great. However, each team needs a representative, and it was John Castino who's doing very well. But it's just, it's just easier to. I had onions for lunch, so that's what onions on my sub. So that's why I'm having a little trouble here. So John Castino is a second. It's easier to get into the All-Star game as a second baseman than a third baseman for Gary Gaetti when you have like George Brett and you'll see who is our starting third baseman. It's a lot harder then. So that's why John Castino is and he was very good. 299, 353, 445. Very good for a second baseman. And it's his second replay All-Star game, as he was a replay or All-Star in 1980, which was an incredible. If you go back into this replay and look at the 1980 Minnesota Twins, it was an amazing story. That postseason, that World Series. First they go and beat the Yankees in the American League Championship, and then they went up against Houston. It was one of the most amazing World Series. You'll have to go back and see it for yourself. But, the amazing Twins of 1980. And then, from the Milwaukee Brewers, the shortstop, Robin Yount. His second replay All-Star game, his real third All-Star game. From the Kansas City Royals, the third baseman, George Brett. And he has these astronomical numbers, even though he has missed the entire month of June. So this is all April and May. 12 home runs, 44 RBIs, 46 runs. Incredible numbers. And yet, he's still not the starting third baseman. It's his second replay All-Star game. He did not, astonishingly, was not an All-Star in that 1980 out-of-his-mind season that he had when he almost bat 400. And that's because he was injured much of the first half. And he was also a real All-Star, his eighth. Now the outfield reserves. From the Oakland A's, Rickey Henderson. He has 57 stolen bases so far this year. Leads Major League Baseball. From the New York Yankees, Dave Winfield. 306, 352, 528. His second replay All-Star game and his seventh real All-Star game. Now the starting lineup for the American League All-Stars. The manager. He took an underachieving and overpowered 500 Milwaukee Brewer team midway through the 1982 season from the intense Buck Rogers. His laid-back personality fit in much better with the club, and to this day, members of the 1982 Brewers say they loved him and would have went through a wall. Was it Harvey's wall? For him. Was he born as this laid-back person? Or did he learn it through adversity? He certainly had plenty of adversity, as he was part of one of the most infamous trades in baseball history when after the 1959 season he was traded from the Detroit Tigers to the Cleveland Indians for Rocky Colavito. Colavito was a legend in Cleveland, and fans of the Tribe hated the trade from the moment it was announced, and our manager must have had a terrible time in Cleveland because of that. To this day, that trade is called the Curse of Rocky Colavito and is often blamed for the Indians not winning the World Series for the past 60 years. He was only in Cleveland for the 1960 season and then mercifully was sent to the San Francisco Giants, where his skills were once again appreciated. However, could it be that this 1960 in Cleveland was at least part of why our manager was such a good, calm players manager. When you go through great adversity, often you come through it not sweating the small stuff. He also had the distinction of being the final out for not one, but two Sandy Koufax no-hitters. The first was in 1963 when he was with the Giants, and the second came in 1965 when he was with the Cubs. The latter was a perfect game. What are the odds of that? The same guy being the final out for the same pitcher, two of his no-hitters. This game of baseball is like no other. More adversity, baseball style. Forever, the great Brewer Ball Club of the early 80s will be known as Harvey's Wallbangers in his honor. From the Milwaukee Brewers, Harvey Keene. And unfortunately, he passed away only, I think, 4 years after this. Leading off and playing third, a rookie. So naturally, he's in his first replay All-Star game. We are ahead of the trend in this replay, as he will not be a real All-Star until 1985, and then he will be one for the next 12 consecutive years. He is the story of this replay season so far, as he is not only flirting with 400, he has taken 400 out on several dates, and he has already proposed. We shall see if 400 says yes at the end of the season. He's among the long, head-scratching list. I go on, I know, it's redundant, but I can't believe it, of Red Sox who jump ship and play for the Yankees. Personally, I could never do it, no matter how much money the evil empire offered. When you play for the Boston Red Sox, and you have success for the Boston Red Sox, I can see if you're just, some nobody, scrub 25th man, and you jump to the Yankees, hey, all the power to you. But if you are a success, a legend in Boston, and are loved by the Fenway faithful, how can you then turn around and say, screw you, I'm going to play for the team you hate more than anything on earth? I will never understand that. Oh well, that is years away, way after the end of this replay, so we'll just pretend it won't happen. As of this moment, he is first in the National League in batting average. First in baseball, of course, but in All-Star games, we talk about leagues. He is first in the American League in hits. First in on-base percentage, just shy of 50%. If you think he's just a punch-and-Judy hitter, think again, as you might be surprised to know that he's also third in the league in slugging percentage. Add the two together, and he's the leader in on-base percentage by almost 100 percentage points over the dude in second place. He is fourth in walks. He is tied for third in triples. Can you say MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same year? From the Boston Red Sox, Wade Boggs, 421 batting average, 494 on-base percentage, 558 slugging, 2 homers, 48 RBIs, 53 runs. And there's his famous rookie card, which in the 80s, everybody thought would be worth hundreds of dollars by now. But I think I looked and it's only $25. I think, people who thought that baseball cards were a good investment, of which I was one of them. I was a poor college student and a graduate student at that time. And every penny I had, this extra penny I spent on baseball cards. I thought, hey, I love baseball. I love baseball cards. And yeah, they're going to be great value someday. Everybody talked. That was the talk of the 80s, that they would just go up, up, up in value. But they didn't. Here, his card is only worth $25 today. Batting second, the designated hitter. If it wasn't for Boggs, we'd be talking about his chances at 400. However, because of Boggs, our DH is the quietest 388 hitter in the history of baseball. This man is a legend. His real appearance in the 1983 All-Star Game was his 17th of 18 straight years in the game. And it wasn't that he snuck in as the 28th man. He consistently was the leading vote getter among the fans for the American League team. Surprisingly, this is his first replay All-Star Game appearance. He typifies the way baseball has changed in the past 35 years. It used to be that hitters like Boggs, Gwynn, Rose, and our DH were greatly appreciated by the baseball public. Guys who got 200 hits every year and batted between 330 and 350 consistently were seen as superstars. Today, batting average is seen as the most overrated stat. That is why today our DH is on some guy's list as one of the all-time leaders in undeserving All-Star Game appearances. Look at his home run totals. How can a guy be an all-star when he averaged 6 homers a year? Call me an old curmudgeon if you want, but I just like baseball better when strikeouts were low, batting averages were high, and the purpose of the number 2 man in the lineup was to move runners along. Sure, a walk is as good as often, not always. I mean, early in the inning, yes, a walk is as good as a hit, not late in the inning. But a hit is much more interesting. I think I ruined that with my rant, but I'll say it again. Sure, a walk is often as good as a hit, but a hit is much more interesting. That is so true. Pitchers used to always say that they feared hitters like our DH much more than the big home run hitter. Those heavy hitters usually got themselves out, while a great contact hitter wore a pitcher out and made him sweat. How exciting it was when Rickey or Raines or Vince Coleman was on first. Pitchers were completely rattled, and no one took a bathroom break in anticipation of the steal. However, our DH is second in the American League in batting average, second in on-base percentage, fourth in OPS, and he only has struck out 16 times in 250 plate appearances. From the California Angels, Rod Carew. Batting third and playing second base. Our second baseman is the third American League hitter among the top 3 in the batting order with an on-base percentage over 400. In fact, the 1, 2, 3 batters in the AL lineup are also 1, 2, 3 in the American League in our on-base percentage. Unlike the first 2 guys, he can also hit the ball out of the ballpark. Back in 1976, when George Steinbrenner wanted to dabble for the first time in the free agent market, our second baseman was the guy he wanted. When he signed with the Angels instead, George had to settle for Reggie Jackson. This is his 3rd consecutive replay All-Star appearance. He was a 6-time real All-Star, but not this year. He enters this game 5th in American League in batting average, 3rd on base, 6th slugging, 2nd OPS, tied for 7th in walks. From the California Angels, Bobby Grich. And may I say, he has an epic stash as well. 337, 426, 537, 14 homers, 42 RBIs. Batting 4th and playing first base, he has been Mr. Everything for the surprising Toronto Blue Jays this year. He has been the player of the game, and the Jays win so many times that I've struggled to find enough unique baseball cards to display. What I do is I find a unique baseball card every time they're named as a player of the game. But I can't go forward, I've got to go backwards. So in the case of this man, because he's been named 9 times already in the first half, the player of the game, I am on 1979 baseball cards. I've gone that far. I've used up all those cards in the write-ups. None of his production has been wasted or meaningless. Time and time again, he was the guy to hit the home run to give the Jays their 1-run victory for their major league leading 20-5 record in 1-run games, or that big extra inning hit that gave Toronto that incredible 10-0 record in extra innings. You know that the Jays' great luck has to run out sometime, but if anyone's going to stand up and say, not if I have anything to say about it, it will be our American League cleanup hitter. This is his first replay All-Star game, and he will never be a real All-Star. It's amazing that he was a baseball player at all, because football is his pedigree. His cousin is the legendary Raider offensive lineman Gene Upshaw, and another cousin, Marvin Upshaw, was also an NFL defensive lineman. His son, Chad Upshaw, played college football as a tight end for the University of Buffalo. He was undrafted, but he did sign a 3-year contract with the Carolina Panthers in 2007. However, this Upshaw was a baseball player, and not just some scrub. He's 3rd in batting average, tied for 4th in RBI, 2nd in hits, 6th in on-base percentage, 1st in slugging, 3rd in OPS, tied for 3rd in doubles, and 1st in Player of the Game awards. From the Toronto Blue Jays, Willie Upshaw. 355 batting average, 389 on base, 572 slugging, 14 home runs, 58 RBIs. Batting fifth and playing shortstop. In the real 1983, he was the one who dominated the headlines, not Boggs, not Carew, not Upshaw, not Hendrick or Jack Clark. It had nothing to do with Lou Gehrig or being an Iron Man. It had to do with him changing the shortstop position from the typical little glove-first singles hitter to this tall, middle-of-the-order power hitter who was also excellent defensively. He really was the first of what we see shortstops today. His replay stats are pretty much bang on to what he did in real life. The main difference is he's on pace to drive over 30 more runs than he really did. This is his first replay All-Star game. He was also a real All-Star, but he was not the starter. They gave the nod to Robin Yount, even though Ripken was better. It was his first of 19 consecutive All-Star appearances. 1983 would be his only world championship. How often does this happen? Something great happens so early in life that one thinks it's kind of easy and they assume it's going to happen again and again, but it never does. That's why they say baseball is like life. If he wants to get his replay world championship, he and his teammates have work to do, as the Orioles are currently 7 games out of first. He is currently 15th in the American League in batting average, 2nd in RBIs, one of the 6 American leaguers with 100 hits, 5th in slugging, 7th in OPS, 1st in doubles with 31. That pace will give him over 60 doubles for the season, something that's only happened 6 times in the history of baseball, and it's never happened outside the decade-long span of 1926 to 1936. In that 10-year, 11-year span, you had 6 guys that had 60 doubles, and it's never been done any other time in baseball history. But Cal Ripken's on the pace to be the first. From the Baltimore Orioles, Cal Ripken Jr. 67 RBIs already. Batting 6th and playing center field, he's the 3rd Angel of the starting AL lineup. By this, you might assume the Angels were dominating the 1983 AL West standings like they did in 1982. They did. You look in the replay, they were from start to finish domination. They won, I think it was 109 games. But you think maybe they're dominating again this year, but they're not. Their pitching is atrocious. They're 12th in the league in pitching. This is his first replay All-Star game. This was his 9th real All-Star game appearance. In that game, he provided the most memorable All-Star game moment of the 80s when he hit the only Grand Slam in All-Star game history off Atlee Hammaker. He burst on the scene in 1975 with the Red Sox and was named Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. Could we have another Red Sox player do the same this season? That has only been duplicated by Ichiro, but let's be honest, Ichiro really wasn't a rookie. He was one of the great what could have been stories in baseball. With all his ability, what if he did not go all out on every play and didn't get hurt so often? How great could he have been? He doesn't lead the league in a lot of categories, but he's strong in all areas. He is tied for 3rd in home runs and is 7th in slugging. From the California Angels, Freddie Lynn. Batting 7th and playing right field. Okay, we all know that a member of the Mariners, A's, and Rangers have to be selected. But in his case, he deserves it to the point that he's been named as a starter. He was the Montreal Expos Player of the Year in 1979, but they traded him to the Rangers to make room for a young, up-and-coming third baseman, Tim Wallach. But hey, Expos, you didn't have to trade him to make room for Wallach. The Rangers moved him to right field, and he has done very good there. And you guys now have a revolving door in right field, so you could be using him right now. Oh well, they got Al Oliver in the trade, which is pretty good, especially in 1982, although Al Oliver is almost at the end of his career. There are just some people who should not have facial hair, and some should not. Or let's say that again. There are just some people who should have facial hair, and some should not. Look at Freddie Lynn. Look at this picture here. That's the picture of a guy who should not have facial hair. He looks strange. Our right fielder, on the other hand, has a great, glorious beard that suits him 100%. Why did you shave it off, Lance Parrish? Was it the Texas Heat? He's having a great season. In a year of high batting averages, he's right up there in 11th place, 319. He has struggled to drive in runs, but that is only because he's on a team that's last in the American League in on-base percentage. Can you imagine how many ribbies he would have batting in that Red Sox or Brewer or even that Expos lineup? He is 4th in slugging, 6th in OPS, which is probably the best indicator of his hitter's success. Typically in the 80s, when you look at a stat sheet and see the name L. Parrish, you assumed it was the Tiger catcher, but not this year. It's the Ranger L. Parrish that's exceeding the Tiger in every category, almost every category. It's his first replay All-Star game. Lance was the replay All-Star game from 80 to 82, and now it's Larry's turn. Maybe they're the same person and cannot be together in one place at the same time. From the Texas Rangers, Larry Parrish. Batting 8th and playing in left. The National League had 2 Darryls in the starting lineup, and now in the American League we have back-to-back Larrys. It might be a shock to you that he's an all-star. It's his first replay all-star game, and he never was a real all-star. But this is one reason why I like this replay so much. You can see underrated guys like this Larry and name him deservingly to an all-star game where he didn't have the big name in real life. He was the offensive leader of the 1983 Detroit Tigers. If he is, then he's going to be acknowledged as such. Who cares if he doesn't have the big name? He's 4th in the American League in batting average with a .349 batting average. Normally a guy who hits .349 would be leading the league, but not this year. He is 5th in hits. And when you have an on-base slugging combination of .375, .500, you're an all-star. So let's give this man his due. From the Detroit Tigers, Larry Herndon. Batting 9th, the catcher. In reality, he's not a single person. He is one half of a catching platoon that has a combined slash of .275, .350, .490, which is great for a catcher. 16 home runs, 38 RBIs, and 49 runs at the break. He is the left-handed side of the two-handed monster, and so he gets the greater number of plate appearances and thus the greater notoriety. He was the American League Player of the Month for May. It's his first replay All-Star game, and his only All-Star appearance was in 1985. He was born in Detroit, but unlike most ball players who played in Canada, he has really embraced his adopted country, being a Canadian ambassador of baseball for many years and the manager of the National Canadian Baseball Team. For these reasons, he will always be loved in Canada. I personally always called him Ernie Twit when he played with the Jays, but I meant it in the most affectionate way possible. I love the way he went to one knee when he hit home runs, like he was not telling the ball, "Will you marry me?" but rather, "Why don't you go and take a hike?" From the Toronto Blue Jays, Ernie Whitt. And now the starting pitcher for the American League. One of the overall goals of this replay was to compare this pitcher with Jack Morris to see who would have the better replay stats through the 80s. Since this is his second All-Star game start to Jack's one, and since he's the reigning American League Cy Young Award king, I would say he has the edge so far over Jack. I have to admit, he is my all-time favorite Blue Jay player. Looking at the archives, early in his career in the American newspapers, he was always mentioned as a possible trade candidate. The narrative went this way: "We need pitching," said some team like Yankees or Los Angeles or Chicago White Sox. "We need some pitching. We should trade for that young Steeb up there in the frozen wasteland of Toronto. Maybe we can give them a bucket of balls for him. Maybe even snowballs. Hardy har har. Get it? Snowballs? Because they're in Canada?" This is why the Blue Jays were such a great organization and were so successful so soon. While some other expansion teams would have said, "We need a public relations boost. Look, the Yankees are willing to trade us a 36-year-old legend for our 23-year-old future ace. Let's do it." The Blue Jays must have had multiple offers for Steeb in 1980-81, judging by what the newspapers were saying, and to each of them the Jays said no thanks, because they're polite Canadians. That goes without saying today, but back in the 60s and 70s, teams often traded young players for old has-beens. Can you say Kansas City Athletics? The Jays' young ace is tied for first in the American League in ERA. He leads in wins by 3. He's on pace for 26. He's tied for first with Jack in strikeouts. He's first in innings pitched, on pace for 320 innings pitched. He's third in whip, just behind Jack. He is tied for second in complete games and tied for fifth in lowest batting average allowed. He is not only the replay American League starter, he was the real 1983 American League starter. It's his second replay All-Star game and his third real All-Star game. If he keeps this up, he will be back-to-back Cy Young Award winner, and that would be something only Hall of Fame pitchers would do. From the Toronto Blue Jays, Dave Stieb. 13-3, 2.43 ERA, 1.11 whip, 212 batting average against, 49 walks, 114 strikeouts. And now, our honorary American League All-Star. 2 great legends of baseball have announced their retirement after the 83 season, and thus both have been honored by being All-Stars for the final time, one in each league. From 1939 to 1983, that's 45 seasons. Except for military service, there were only 2 men that patrolled the real estate in front of the Green Monster at Fenway Park for the Red Sox. First, for 22 seasons, they had Ted Williams, arguably the greatest hitter who ever lived. Then the man who was assigned the task, the dubious task, of replacing Williams was our honorary All-Star. He played left field and also first base for the Red Sox for 23 seasons, of which this is his last. At first, the Fenway faithful often let our hero, we will just call him Yaz, know that he was not Ted Williams. Yaz had the ability to look in the mirror. He knew he wasn't Ted Williams. But that all changed in 1967, the year of the impossible dream. When Yaz had his greatest season, his Triple Crown season, from that point on, everything changed. And from all that I have read, the Boston fans no longer reminded him that he wasn't Teddy Ballgame. He's a member of a most exclusive club of only 7 members. That is the club of batters who have both 3,000 hits and 450 home runs. To be only one of 7 people to do this means he was something special. This is his first replay All-Star game, the one accolade that has eluded him until now, so I'm sure that he can retire knowing he has accomplished all the personal accomplishments possible. At first, he wasn't going to retire at the end of 83. He felt he had another year in him, but a huge June slump convinced him it was time to hang them up. Later, he would say that if he would have known how good Roger Clemens would be in 1984, he would have stayed around just one more year just to play with him. From the Boston Red Sox, Carl Yastrzemski. And that, ladies and gentlemen, all that is our introduction to the 1983 All-Star Game. We will play that game now. No further ado. Leading off for the National League, Tim Raines. Strikes out. Oh, yes, we have to change one thing. Move to next batter manually. Always have to make that change. Okay, here we go. So, Johnny Ray. Johnny Ray, he walks. Should we try to steal? Played safe. Got big boppers behind him. George Hendrick. Strikes out. Jack Clark. Grounds out to the pitcher on the end of the first half of the first inning. Here's Wade Boggs, the story of the replay, versus Steve Carlton. He strikes out. Rod Carew walks. No steal. Bobby Grich. Sorry, misspoke. He walks. 2 men on against lefty Carlton for Willie Upshaw. If this was the Jays, he'd come through. What will he do in the All-Star game? He has an infield pop fly to the second baseman. Here's Cal Ripken. He strikes out. End of 1, no score. Darrell Evans. He singles off Steve, the first hit that Steve has allowed. Here's Schmitty. And he gets a re-roll, and it's no error, and it's a double play. 6-4-3. Ripken. Grich. I should announce one thing. Willie Upshaw has been gracious enough because Rod Carew, he was named the starting first baseman. That's the kind of guy he is, though. Rod Carew has a little bit better fielding as a first baseman than Upshaw, so Willie has agreed to play as a DH and Carew the field. So that's a gracious man he is. Here's Dale Murphy. Singles. He's going to try to steal. Does not get the jump. Darryl Porter flied out. Here's Freddie Lynn. We have to have him against Atlee Hammaker. We got to plan that out. Here's, he walks. He's an S runner. Larry Parrish. Double play ball. 4-6-3. Larry Herndon. He walks. Gonna try to steal. Almost gets caught. Doesn't get the jump. Ernie Witt. He walks. 2 men on. 2 out for Wade Boggs. And he flies out to right. He hasn't done well in this 2 videos. Of course, he was 0 for 3 in the perfect game, and now he's 0 for 2 in the All-Star game. He's saying, you're King Ikeboo, you're making all this stuff up about how great Wade Boggs is in this replay. Here's the 3rd inning now, the last inning for these 2 pitchers. Dave Stieb, he's given up no hits so far. So, yes, he's got a no-hitter going, but he can do a maximum of 3 innings. So, he flied out to left. Tim Raines, strikeout. Johnny Ray, walk. Try to steal. Oh, he gets caught stealing. What a throw by Ernie Witt to throw him out and end the inning. So, Dave Stieb he's not going to get the loss today like he did last year. He had 3 hitless innings. That's the thing that All-Star Game MVPs are made of. Here's Steve Carlton. He gets double ones. 23, that is a 6. That will be a double for Rod Carew. Bobby Grich. Ground out to short. He didn't hit the ball the other way to advance the runner. Come on, Grich. Here's Willie Upshaw. Willie Upshaw walks. Cal Ripken gets a base hit and he scores. That makes Dave Stieb the potential winner. Here's Freddie Lynn. He walks. Bases loaded for Larry Parrish with only 1 out. And for the second time, Larry Parrish hits into a double play. And the inning's over, but the American League gets their run. And it's 1-0 after 3. So that's it for Stieb. And we will bring in, the rest of the guys, we'll leave one guy to be, let's see, in case this goes we play the All-Star game straight. If this goes 20 innings, we don't say this is a tie. We play it to the end. So we have to have one guy that we're just going to designate as the last guy. He will pitch however innings they need to pitch. So I don't know who that will be. Maybe we'll make Rick Sutcliffe the guy. Rick Sutcliffe, you are his relief rating is worse than his starting rating, so we won't have him. Maybe we'll have Don Sutton. Don Sutton, you've been in lots of All-Star games. You've had lots of opportunity. You will be the last guy. Okay? We all agree. So it's natural to have, after Steve, we'll have Jack. Jack Morris is coming to the game. Jack Morris is a 10-2 pitcher. Steve was a 12-1 pitcher in 1983. That was great. Jack was not as good. 10-2 with a B and an X, or with an X. Here's George Hendrick. And we'll start substituting batters in the 5th inning. He strikes out. So he's not playing for the Cardinals now, so he doesn't come through all the time. Jack Clark. He gets a single. He's going to try to steal. Almost gets thrown out. But he can't. He just stays at first. Darrell Evans. Let's see what the giant double dynamic duo can do. Strikes out. Michael Jack Schmidt. And he grounds out. So Jack has not perfect, but no runs in the 4th. And now we will bring, who will be the designated man? It's not going to be Atlee Hammaker. He's going to come in this game no matter what. Not him. Steve Rogers, maybe. No, it's his first replay. Someone who's been here many times. Well, there's not a lot. There's a lot of rookies here. John Candelaria says, I'll be the guy. I'll be the guy. I'll take one for the team. I will be the last man. Maybe if it's a tie game, I'll have lots of opportunity to show my stuff. Okay, he's the guy. We're going to bring in the Count. The Count has been amazing in this 1983 season. He's facing Larry Herndon, Ernie Witt, and Wade Boggs. And he gives up a single to Larry Herndon. He belongs. Here's Ernie Witt. He goes to one knee and gets a single. First and second. The American League are definitely playing better than the Nationals to break this. It's only a 1-game winning streak for the National League in the replay, but in the real life, it's 11 games. Here's Wade Boggs. Can he do something finally? No, he flies out. Rod Carew. Soft line drive. Runners hold. Gritch. He gets double ones. 21. That is a 6. 2-run score. It's 3-0 American League. Bobby Gritch and Montefusco probably gives up more runs in this one inning than he gave up entire season so far. Well, it's close. Willie Upshaw is up, and he flies out. So that's it for Jack. Should we just go in alphabetical order and leave Quisenberry for the closer? So we're bringing Mike Armstrong. We don't want to think too long. It's not exciting television to just say, do we want him? Do we want him? Let's flip a coin. Ooh. No, let's just go down the line. Here's Dale Murphy. National League, can they get back in this game? They're down 3-0. Porter flies out. Dickie Thon, strike. Gets another roll. Grounds out. So that's it for the Count. Just go down the line. Bedrosian comes in. We're going to leave... who are we going to leave as the closer? Roscoe. We're going to bring in a Roscoe to close. So Bedrosian coming into the game. Cam Bedrosian's dad. He gets on with an error. Ripken's on with an error. Error by 6. That is... 6. I gotta look this way. Dickie Thon's error. Look at this. The fielding. 43 for the National League. That's great. Anything over 41 is fielding A. And yet still, Dickie Thon gives up an error. Here's Fred. Oh, we should have had Atlee Hammaker come into the game. Okay, we'll leave him in. And the next time he's coming up, we'll bring in Atlee Hammaker. That's what everybody wants to see. 2 men on. Larry Parrish. Can he hit in a double play? No, he doesn't. Way to go. But he pops out to the second baseman. Larry Herndon walks to load the bases. Ernie Witt. Sacrifice fly, and the 4th run is in. Here's Wade Boggs. And he strikes out. Who is this guy? What have you done with my Wade Boggs? Okay, that's it for Mike Armstrong. Mike Armstrong, Bannister. We said, who did we say again? Don Sutton, yes. So Bannister is coming in. Count Floyd Bannister. Here we go. Tim Raines. Oh, we're going to start. We'll leave Raines in. We need base runners. Okay, Johnny Ray, you're coming out. And into the game will come your replacement, Tommy Herr. Tommy Herr's coming in. And he strikes out. George Hendricks coming out. And your replacement will be Steve Garvey. I think we have 2 of them, don't we? Garvey and Chambliss. Chambliss, you didn't break the Cubs' hearts in 1984, so you're coming into the game. I guess you broke the Kansas City Royals' hearts in 1976. And he grounds out. So that's it for Bedrosian. Okay, is Freddie Lynn coming up? He might. He's up 5th. We can't count on them giving up lots of runs. So we will bring in... we're just going down the line. So we'll bring in Frank DePino. Frank DePino comes in. Closer of the Astros. Strikes out Carew. Oh, yeah, we got to start replacing guys. Okay, so Upshaw. Bye-bye, Upshaw. We'll bring in Pat Putnam of the Mariners. Everybody in Seattle goes, yay, our guy's getting in the game. Isn't that great? Here's the pitch, and he strikes out. Ooh, too bad he got in the game. Okay, so that's it for Bannister. So definitely we're going to put Atlee Hammaker next time. Don't let me forget. Okay, we'll bring in George Frazier. George Frazier comes in the game. Face Jack Clark. Oh no, we got to bring in someone else in. We're leaving Reigns stay in the whole game. He's a young guy. We'll bring in Jose Cruz to face George Frazier. Gets a base hit. Let's see if he can rally. He's not going to steal. We're down 4 runs. Evans, you're done. Evans will bring in who? Johnny Bench. We'll DH. We'll bring in Bench off the bench. And, oh, he gets double 4s. He could have had a base hit, but Frazier takes the hit away. Cruz goes to second. Here's Schmidt. Sorry, we got to leave Schmidt in one more time. Strikes out. Murphy. We'll bring in the guy, Andreasen. Come and play center field for Murphy. The Hawk. And he gets a base hit, and he drives in a run. Way to go, Hawk. And he doesn't get the steal. So it's 4-1 now. And here's poor. No, we got to bring in Gary Carter. Gary Carter. Here's Carter. Mr. Carter. And he fielder's choice. So that's it for DePino. And now, what you've been waiting for. Atlee Hammaker to face Freddie Lynn. It won't be with the bases loaded. I'm sorry. I cannot arrange that. But I can arrange the meeting once again of these two guys. Ripken, you're done, Ripken. In will come Robin Yount to play shortstop. And Atlee Hammaker, unlike he's already doing better than the real All-Star game. He took away a hit, an 8 hit. And instead he's out. Here's the matchup. Freddie Lynn has walked 3 times in this game. And he's up again. We're not taking him out. This is the chance. Here we see what happens. Foul ball. He gets another roll. Freddie Lynn. He's no balls and 1 strike to Freddie Lynn. And he pops out to the second baseman. Atlee Hammaker has his revenge. And that's it for Parrish. Parrish will come out. Winfield comes in. Dave Winfield grounds out. That's it for Frazier. We're in the 8th inning. I don't think we're going to have a extra inning game, so we will bring in Tippy. Tippy Martinez will come into the game, and Quiz will pitch the 9th. And that's it for Dickie Thon. And then will come Yogi Jr., as I call him. Yogi Jr. is up to face Tippy Martinez. And he strikes out. And Cruz and Dawson. I don't think there is any more. These guys don't play outfield, so we're going to have Tim Raines. Going to keep on going. He is struck out twice, and he flew out to center field. And he walks, and he's going to try to steal, and he steals second. And Tippy goes down to a B. Here's Tommy Herr. Tommy Herr grounds out, and the runner holds. Chris Chambliss flies out. The inning's over. Atlee Hammaker is the hero of the game. Well, he can't because he's on the losing team. Okay, so we're in the 8th inning, and we're going to bring in Tom Niedenfuer of the Dodgers. Tommy Niedenfuer, and that's it for Larry Herndon. Yep, we're going to bring in Ricky. Ricky, don't lose your number. Here we go. Flied out. Ernie Witt. That's it for Witt. He's done well, though. Walked, singled, and had a sacrifice fly. And we'll bring in, not George Brett, Carlton Fisk. Carlton Fisk will come into the game to face Niedenfuer. And he strikes out. Wade Boggs. That's it for you. We're going to bring in George Brett. He was 0 for 4. He probably doesn't go 0 for 4 very often in the regular season, let alone the All-Star game. And he strikes. He gets another roll of the dice. He gets another roll of the dice. And he flies out. So that's it. So now it's the last chance for the National League. In will come the closer, Dan Quisenberry. I love pitchers like Quisenberry. I love those submarine pitchers. Him and Kent DeColvey. I just dug them when I was a kid. Okay, here's Jose Cruz. Could have had a hit, but Quisenberry takes it away. One away. Here's Johnny Bench's last ever All-Star at bat. And he pops out to second base. And Schmidt, sorry, but you got to come out for Ron Say the Penguin. The last chance for the Cubs, or for the Cubs, for the National League. And he gets another roll. 2 balls on Ron Say. Strike. 2-1 on Say. Unless he rolls 11 or 12, this game is over. 55. Select the winning pitcher. It's got to be Dave Stieb. Of course, yes, it's not going by the All-Star game rules. It's going by the regular rules. All right, well, we'll give it to Jack. So Jack says, I'm the better pitcher in the 80s. I got an All-Star game MVP. Or winning game. Only because the rules said so. So, that's it. Really, the winning pitcher is Dave Stieb. In real life, this would be so. But we'll give it to Jack. So, who's going to be the MVP for real? We could give it to Stieb. 3 innings, no run. He did give up a couple of hits. But Bobby Grich had 2 RBIs. Who would you vote for? Not Wade Boggs. Bobby Grich. Nobody hit a home run in this game. So I'll put no home runs hit. I'm going to give it to Stieb. Even though he's not the winning pitcher, he's the MVP. Pitched 3 innings, only gave up 2 hits, 2 walks, struck out 3, and no runs. That's, I declare. So that's got to be a long video. But I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Once again, the final score in the 1983 All-Star Game, just like real life, although it was 13-3 in real life, it was a much more entertaining game as the American League 4, the National League 1. This is King Ikeboo signing off from the south side of Chicago. We'll catch you next time. Goodbye, everybody.